Alex Mercer had never imagined that he would find himself on a strange, alien planet fighting for his life. The distant hum of his battle suit was the only sound that filled his ears as his team marched forward into enemy territory. The planet Burith was not known for its lush landscapes or peaceful atmospheres. Instead, it was a war zone, torn apart by years of conflict between humans and the Valerians, an alien species known for their ruthless tactics and advanced technology. For Alex and his fellow soldiers, this was just another day. A day filled with gunfire, explosions, and the constant pressure of war. They had been sent to Burith to reclaim an important supply depot that had fallen into enemy hands. It was a mission that seemed straightforward, but the moment they landed, Alex knew something was wrong. The skies were too silent, and the air felt heavier than it should have. As they moved deeper into the rocky terrain, the tension grew. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every gust of wind felt like it could be the precursor to an ambush. Alex glanced at his team, trying to focus on the mission, but his instincts were screaming that they were walking into a trap. The ground suddenly shook as an explosion erupted nearby, sending Alex and his team sprawling to the dirt. His helmet's visor cracked as the blast hit, and he could hear the distant roar of alien ships as they descended from the sky. The Valerians had arrived. "Get to cover," shouted Sergeant Daniels, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Alex didn't need to be told twice. He ducked behind a large rock, watching as his comrades scrambled to do the same. The battle raged on. Alien soldiers, sleek and deadly in their armor, moved with terrifying precision. The humans, despite their courage and skill, were outnumbered and outgunned. Alex's rifle felt heavy in his hands, but he fired without hesitation, each shot aimed at the Valerians who appeared through the haze of smoke. But no matter how many they took down, more seemed to take their place. It wasn't long before Alex found himself separated from the rest of the team. A sudden barrage of fire forced him to run for his life, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had to get back to his unit, but every step was a gamble. The Valerians were closing in, and there was nowhere to run. As he sprinted through the rocky hills, Alex stumbled across something that made his blood run cold. A Valerian officer, her silver armor gleaming in the light of the twin suns, was standing before him. She was tall with striking features that radiated authority. Her eyes locked onto Alex's with a chilling intensity. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Alex had no choice but to raise his weapon, his mind racing. He couldn't take her on by himself. But before he could pull the trigger, the alien officer raised her hand in a motion that stopped him in his tracks. "You're the human, aren't you?" the officer said, her voice smooth and commanding, though there was something almost familiar in it. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had heard stories of Valerian officers, but this one seemed different. Her presence alone was enough to make him hesitate, unsure of what to do. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Alex growled, his grip tightening on his rifle, but the officer didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, a small but knowing smile that made Alex's blood run colder. "You don't understand," she said softly. "You saved my life once, don't you remember?" Alex's mind raced. What was she talking about? He had never seen this alien before. But as he looked into her eyes, something about her seemed oddly familiar, like a distant memory he couldn't quite place. Before he could respond, the officer's expression turned serious again. "You will live for now," she said, her tone firm. "But you will answer to me." With that, she gestured for her soldiers to approach, and they quickly disarmed Alex, restraining him with expert precision. As Alex was escorted through the Valerian camp, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn into something much bigger than a simple battle. The officer, now revealing herself as Queen Valera, the ruler of the Valerian Empire, led him through the camp with an air of command that was both terrifying and captivating. The other soldiers, though visibly cautious, stepped aside in respect as the queen passed by. Alex could feel their eyes on him, and the weight of their gazes made him even more uneasy. Queen Valera's presence was overwhelming, but there was also an unspoken tension between them, something deeper than just the war between their species. "I could have killed you, you know," Valera said, breaking the silence. "But I won't, not yet. You will answer for what you did to me, human." Alex's mind raced. What did she mean by that? He had never met her before, had he? His memory felt foggy, clouded by the chaos of war. He had saved countless lives in the past, but he couldn't recall ever encountering someone like Queen Valera. "Answer for what?" Alex asked, his voice rough. "I've never even seen you before." Valera stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. Her eyes narrowed, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and something else, something deeper, almost sorrowful. "You don't remember," she said, almost to herself. "You were there that day years ago when I was just a child. I was almost killed in an ambush. You saved me. You saved me when no one else could." Her voice faltered for a moment, but then she straightened her posture as if forcing herself to be strong. "And now you're here in my grasp, a reminder of everything I've lost." Alex was stunned. His mind raced back to the years before the war when he had been a simple soldier in a small outpost. There were so many faces, so many missions. It was hard to keep track of them all. But as Valera spoke, a memory began to surface. A young, alien girl, terrified, alone. He had pulled her to safety during an attack. He had saved her life, though he had never known who she was. "Queen Valera," Alex whispered, realization dawning on him. "That was you." Valera's lips curled into a small, almost sad smile. "Yes, that was me." Her tone softened, and for the first time Alex saw a flicker of humanity in her eyes. "You don't remember me, but I remember you. You have been a part of my life for longer than you realize." Alex didn't know what to say. Everything he thought he knew about the Valerians had been turned upside down. The enemy he had been fighting for years was no longer just a faceless enemy. Queen Valera was real, and her connection to him went far beyond the battlefield. But that didn't change the fact that they were on opposite sides of a war. Valera may have saved his life, but she was still the enemy, and the war was far from over. Alex knew he had to stay focused on the mission, but something inside him stirred. The woman before him was not just a ruthless alien queen. She was someone he had once saved, and now, somehow, she had saved him in return. The tension between them crackled in the air, and Alex realized that their paths had crossed for a reason. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. This was no longer just another battle. It was something much more personal. After the encounter on the battlefield, Alex found himself in an unfamiliar situation. Instead of being dragged off to a dark, lonely prison cell, he was treated differently. Queen Valera, the same alien who had led the ruthless Valerian forces for years, now watched him with a strange mixture of admiration and authority. She had given him a second chance, a chance that most prisoners in his position would never have received. The journey from the battlefield to the Valerian flagship was long and tense. Alex sat in silence, his wrists bound by alien cuffs, surrounded by the very soldiers he had once fought against. He could hear their low murmurs, but no one dared approach him. There was a respectful distance between the human and the Valerians now, a quiet acknowledgement that the encounter between him and their queen was not an ordinary one. As the transport ship made its way through space, Alex tried to keep his mind focused. The thoughts swirling in his head were confusing. He had never believed that there could be any form of bond between humans and Valerians, let alone that one of them would show him mercy after everything that had happened. The idea of an alien queen remembering a moment from years ago, when he had saved her life as a child, seemed impossible. Yet the look in her eyes told him it was true. She had known him, and she had saved him. It took hours before they finally arrived at the flagship. The enormous vessel was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The exterior shimmered with a metallic sheen, like the surface of a vast moon, while the inside was a maze of shining corridors and high-tech control rooms. The architecture was sleek, built with a grace that betrayed its intimidating purpose. Everything about the ship screamed power, but also a strange kind of elegance. Alex was led through the long halls, his guards keeping a tight grip on him. The walls were adorned with intricate alien symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of the light. The air inside the ship felt different too, cleaner, thicker, as though it was engineered to feel more controlled, more precise. When they reached the central chamber, Alex was placed in a holding cell, though it was far less oppressive than the ones he had expected. The walls were smooth, made of the same material that seemed to pulse with a faint glow. There was no visible lock, but Alex knew better than to test the security. His guards left, and the door silently closed behind them. He was alone, left with his thoughts and the strange memory of his encounter with Queen Valera. Minutes later, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor and the door to his cell opened. A figure stepped inside. It was Valera. She moved with grace, her silver armor reflecting the soft glow of the room. There was no mistaking her. She was the queen of the Valerians, one of the most feared beings in the galaxy. Yet there was something about her that defied the image of an oppressive ruler. She was not the cold, emotionless leader Alex had expected. Her gaze, intense but not hostile, seemed to hold a depth of understanding. "You are not what I expected," Valera said softly, her voice calm but carrying a hidden strength. "I thought you would be just like the others, quick to fight, quick to die, but you are different." Alex didn't know how to respond. He stood in silence, unsure of what was expected of him. The room felt heavy with tension, but there was no sense of immediate danger. Valera was standing before him, but she wasn't threatening him. In fact, she seemed almost curious. "You've been through much," she continued. "I can see it in your eyes. War has taken its toll on you just as it has taken its toll on me." She paused for a moment, as if considering her words. "But we are not so different, you and I. Both of us are shaped by the battles we have fought, the choices we have made." Alex's mind raced, but he held his tongue. He couldn't understand why she was speaking to him this way. Why was she so open? She was the enemy, an alien queen who had waged war against his people for years. And yet here she was, sharing her thoughts as though they were equals. Valera took a step closer to him. "You must be wondering why I spared your life," she said, her tone softer now. "You probably think it's because of your skills or because you were lucky, but it's not that simple." Her eyes locked onto his. "It's because I know what you've done for me. I know what you did for me when I was just a child." Alex stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. His mind flashed back to the hazy memory of a distant battlefield, a time when he had been nothing more than a soldier following orders. But he couldn't place her. He didn't remember saving anyone who looked like her. "You don't remember, do you?" she asked, almost as if reading his thoughts. There was no malice in her voice, only a quiet sadness. "It was years ago on a different world. I was just a young officer caught in an ambush. You were there, fighting against the same forces we both hated. You saved me that day, when no one else would. You pulled me from the wreckage and kept me alive long enough for my people to find me." Alex's heart raced as the pieces began to fall into place. It was starting to make sense now. He remembered that mission, the chaos of the battle, the strange feeling of pulling someone to safety, but he had never known who the person was. He had never thought it would matter. He had moved on, focused on the war and the countless other faces that had come and gone. "That's who you are," Alex whispered, his voice thick with disbelief. "You were the one I saved. I didn't know. I never knew." Valera nodded slowly. "I know. You didn't remember me and I didn't expect you to, but I never forgot you. You saved my life and I swore that I would repay that debt no matter the cost." Alex was stunned. Here he was, facing the alien queen who had led her forces to conquer his people, and yet she was telling him that he had saved her life all those years ago. The weight of the situation began to settle on him. It wasn't just about the war anymore. It wasn't just about the humans versus the Valerians. There was something personal in this, something deeper than he had ever expected. "You owe me nothing," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I did what anyone would have done. It wasn't a favor, it was just survival." Valera smiled, though it was a bittersweet expression. "Perhaps," she said, "but in this galaxy, survival is everything, and I owe you more than you realize." There was a long pause between them, neither of them knowing what to say next. The silence stretched out, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. Alex was no longer just a soldier in the middle of a war. He was connected to this alien queen in a way he couldn't yet understand. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain: everything was about to change. "I have a mission for you," Valera said, breaking the silence. "You are not a prisoner. You are here because I believe you can help me. There are things at stake that go beyond this war, things that could change the fate of both our species. I need someone I can trust, and I believe that person is you." Alex was taken aback by her words. He had expected her to ask for information, to demand his loyalty, but she was offering him something different. She wasn't treating him as an enemy anymore. She was asking for his help. "What do you need from me?" Alex asked, his voice steady now, though a part of him still couldn't quite believe this was happening. Valera's expression became serious. "I need you to help me uncover a conspiracy within my own ranks, one that could destroy everything I've fought for." She leaned in closer. "And I need you to do it without anyone knowing, not even my own people." Alex looked into her eyes, and for the first time he saw something other than a cold, calculating ruler. He saw a person who was just as trapped by the choices they had made as he was. The weight of the war, the betrayal, the loss. Valera was carrying it all, just as he was. "I'll do it," Alex said quietly, though he wasn't entirely sure why he was agreeing. "But I need to know one thing. Why me? Why not one of your own people?" Valera's gaze softened. "Because you know what it's like to be betrayed. You understand the stakes in a way that no one else can." Alex's mind was racing as he stood before Queen Valera. The weight of her request hung heavily in the air, and the gravity of the situation was beginning to sink in. She had just asked him. No, she had demanded his help in a covert mission that could change the course of not just the war but the future of their two species. He had come here as an enemy soldier, caught in the chaos of a war he had no control over. Now he was being asked to work alongside the very queen he had been fighting against for years. As Valera's gaze remained fixed on him, Alex felt the tension between them, but there was also a flicker of something else, something unexpected. Respect, maybe even trust. He couldn't understand it. He had spent his entire life seeing the Valerians as nothing more than enemies, monsters who had taken everything from humanity. But here was their queen, not only showing him mercy, but offering him an opportunity to prove himself. It was a twist Alex had never imagined. "You don't have to agree," Valera said, her voice steady and calm. "But if you do, you will be working directly under my command. Your mission will be dangerous, and failure will cost us both everything." Alex swallowed hard, his throat dry. The idea of working for the Queen felt wrong on so many levels. She was the ruler of an empire that had waged war against his people for years. Yet the more he thought about it, the more he realized that perhaps this was the only chance he had to stop the war, to make a real difference. "I'll do it," Alex said finally, his voice quiet but resolute. There was no turning back now. He had already crossed a line, and he knew there was no way to go back to the way things were. "What's the plan?" Valera's eyes sparkled with approval. "You will be part of a team. I've already chosen the others who will accompany us. You will go to the heart of the Valerian Empire, to the capital planet of Zenaris. There, we will investigate a rising faction within my own government. They are trying to manipulate the war for their own gain, and they must be stopped before they destroy everything." Alex nodded, trying to process the details. This wasn't just a mission to sabotage the enemy. This was something much more personal. Valera was risking everything to expose corruption within her own ranks. It was almost as if she was asking him to help her save not just the galaxy, but her own empire as well. "The faction," Alex began. "How powerful are they? What's our objective?" "The faction is well-funded and has allies within key positions in the military and government," Valera replied. "Their leader is someone I once trusted, but now I suspect they've been using my position for their own purposes. They want to control the war, not win it. They'll stop at nothing to ensure that." "And how do we stop them?" Alex asked, his mind now racing with questions. This was more than just a simple mission. It was a fight for the soul of an entire empire. Valera's gaze grew even more intense. "We'll infiltrate their ranks, gather intelligence, and expose their plans to my people. But we must be careful. If they suspect that we're onto them, the consequences will be severe. We must act quickly and without leaving any traces." Alex took a deep breath, his thoughts swirling. He had always been trained for combat, for direct confrontations, but this was different. This mission wasn't about fighting on the front lines. It was about secrecy, about slipping into the shadows and gathering information without anyone knowing they were there. It felt like a delicate game. One wrong move and everything could fall apart. "I'm in," Alex said, his voice firm. "When do we leave?" Valera nodded in approval. "We leave immediately, but before we go, I must tell you something. This mission will change everything for both of us. There will be no going back." The team that Valera had assembled was small but highly skilled. There was Zarath, a Valerian engineer who had once worked alongside Valera in the early days of her reign. Zarath was known for his quiet intelligence and unmatched skill with technology. He had an analytical mind and was the one who would help guide Alex through the maze of information they needed to uncover. Then there was Kara, a fierce and loyal warrior who had served in Valera's elite guard. Kara was known for her combat prowess and her unwavering loyalty to the Queen. Though her exterior was tough and unyielding, Alex soon learned that she had a deep sense of honor and was someone who could be trusted completely. And finally, there was Davin, a former diplomat-turned-spy who had connections throughout the galaxy. He had once worked as a negotiator between human and alien factions, but when the war began, he had switched sides. Now he worked for Velara, using his connections to gather intel and move between worlds undetected. Davin's charm and smooth-talking demeanor made him the perfect infiltrator for their mission. Together, they made their way to Zenaris, the capital planet of the Valerian Empire. The journey was long and uneventful, filled with the hum of the ship's engines and the quiet sounds of the crew preparing for the mission ahead. But as they neared the planet, the tension in the air grew palpable. They were about to step into the heart of the enemy's stronghold, a place where the lines between friend and foe were blurred. Alex had never been to Zenaris before, but he had heard stories. It was a planet of immense beauty and power, where the Valerians had built their greatest monuments. The sprawling cities gleamed with towering spires and advanced technology, a testament to their civilization's supremacy. But beneath the surface, there were dark secrets, secrets that had the potential to tear the entire empire apart. As they landed in a secluded part of the capital, Valera's team began preparing for the task ahead. They would need to blend in with the locals, gather information, and stay under the radar. It would take all of their skills to navigate the complex political landscape of Zenaris, where everyone had a hidden agenda, and trust was a rare commodity. The first step of their plan was to meet with a contact, a former ally of Valera's who had gone underground. This contact was said to have valuable information about the faction they were targeting, but he was also a dangerous figure. No one could be sure if he would help them or betray them. Trust was a luxury they could not afford. As they made their way through the bustling streets of Zenaris, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the truth. He had no idea how deep this conspiracy went or who they could trust, but he knew one thing for sure. This mission would change the fate of both humans and Valerians alike. They arrived at a nondescript building, hidden among the towering structures of Zenaris. The city was alive with energy, but it all seemed to fade away as they approached their destination. The door opened, revealing a shadowy figure standing inside. "You're late," the figure said, his voice low and gravelly. "We had delays," Valera replied, stepping forward with a steely gaze. "Are you ready to provide the information we need?" The figure eyed them all carefully, his gaze lingering on Alex. "You're human," he said, his voice tinged with suspicion. "I don't trust your kind." Alex stepped forward, meeting the man's gaze with equal intensity. "You don't have to trust me," he said. "You just have to trust that I'm here for the same reason you are, to stop the people who are destroying everything we've fought for." There was a long pause, and then the man nodded slowly. "All right. Let's talk." The mission was unfolding with a mixture of urgency and uncertainty. Alex had never been involved in anything like this before. The delicate web of trust and secrecy they had been weaving was now at a breaking point, and it was only a matter of time before someone would make a mistake. He could feel the tension in the air as he and his team made their way deeper into the heart of Zenaris. The planet was a place of stark contrasts. From the outside, it appeared to be a shining beacon of civilization, with towering spires and streets filled with Valerian citizens going about their daily routines. But beneath the surface, there were whispers of corruption, betrayal, and deceit. Everyone had a hidden agenda. No one could be trusted completely, and Alex felt that truth with every step they took. Their first major task was to meet with Valera's former ally, a man named Tarin. Tarin had been a key figure in the early days of the Valerian Empire, someone who had once been trusted by the Queen herself. But when the war began, he had disappeared, going underground to avoid the growing tensions within the Empire. Now, he was believed to be hiding in one of Zenaris' most dangerous sectors. The team had to track him down and convince him to share his knowledge of the faction that was plotting against Valera. Tarin was not an easy person to find. He had gone to great lengths to remain hidden, and his reputation made him a difficult ally to approach. But Valera was determined to speak with him, convinced that he was the key to uncovering the truth behind the growing rebellion within her empire. The team spent days searching for Tarin, navigating the city's underground passages and back alleys. They had to be careful. Zenaris was filled with spies, and any wrong move could alert the enemy. It wasn't just the physical danger that weighed on Alex. It was the constant uncertainty of who could be trusted. Even their own allies were potential threats. The team had learned to keep their guard up at all times. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of searching, they found him. Taran was holed up in a dilapidated building at the edge of the city. It was a stark contrast to the sleek, polished structures they had passed earlier. The building was crumbling, its walls covered in graffiti and signs of decay. It was the perfect hiding place for someone like him, someone who wanted to remain unnoticed. Alex and Valera approached the building cautiously. They knew this was a pivotal moment. If Taran refused to help them, they would have to move on to other methods, but there was no guarantee they would be able to find another lead. Taran was their best shot. They knocked on the door and a voice from inside called out, "Who's there?" "It's Valera," the queen replied, her voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." There was a long pause before the door creaked open. Taran stood in the doorway, his face hidden in the shadows. He was an older man with graying hair and a weathered face, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that spoke to a life lived in the shadows. "I never thought I'd see you again, Your Majesty," Taran said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. Valera stepped forward, her expression serious. "We need your help, Taran. There is a faction within my empire, and I need to know everything about them. You know more about this than anyone else. Will you help us?" Taran studied her for a moment before stepping aside and allowing them to enter. "Come in," he said, his tone resigned. "But I warn you, this is not a simple request. You may not like what you hear." Alex followed Valera into the dimly lit room, his senses on high alert. The walls were lined with old books and papers, some of which looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Taran motioned for them to sit at a small, rickety table in the center of the room. "Before I tell you anything," Taran said, his voice low, "I need you to understand one thing. There is a conspiracy within your own ranks, Valera. It's bigger than you think. You trust people who have already made their plans without you." Valera's expression tightened. "What do you mean? Who is behind this?" Taran paused, then spoke in a whisper as though the walls themselves could be listening. "There are members of your inner circle, people you call allies, who have been playing both sides for years. They have been using the war to manipulate the outcome in their favor. If you don't act quickly, they will destroy everything you've worked for." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was a different matter entirely. Valera, the queen who had commanded armies and led her people to victory, was now facing the possibility that her own trusted advisors were plotting against her. "Who are they?" Valera asked, her voice sharp with a mixture of anger and fear. Taran leaned forward, his hands clasped together as he spoke. "It's General Solas, your top military commander, and Minister Lurin, your closest political advisor. They have been secretly coordinating with the human rebels, providing them with information and resources in exchange for a promise of power once the war ends. They want to see you overthrown, Valera. They believe you are too weak to lead, and they are ready to take the throne for themselves." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Alex's mind was racing. General Solas and Minister Lurin were the last people he would have expected to be involved in such a plot. They had always seemed like loyal allies of Valera, the very foundation of her leadership. To hear that they were planning to overthrow her was a blow that Alex knew would shake the queen to her core. Valera sat back in her chair, her face a mask of disbelief and anger. "I never thought it would be them," she murmured. "I trusted them both with everything." "But they've been playing us all along," Taran nodded gravely. "You have to move fast, Valera. If you don't, they will act before you have a chance to stop them. They already have the support of key factions in the Empire. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to remove them." Alex could see the pain in Valera's eyes. She had spent years building her empire, fighting wars, making alliances, and navigating the complexities of politics. Now she was being forced to face the brutal truth that the people she trusted the most were the very ones threatening her throne. Valera's voice was steady, but Alex could hear the underlying tremor of fury in it. "Thank you, Taran. You've given us the information we need. Now we must act. We can't let them tear everything apart." Taran gave a small nod and stood up. "Be careful, Valera. These people are dangerous. They will stop at nothing to get what they want." With that, Valera and Alex left the building, their minds set on the path ahead. They had been given the truth, but it had come at a heavy cost. The enemy wasn't just outside their walls, it was already within their ranks. As they walked through the streets of Zenaris, Alex could feel the weight of the betrayal pressing down on him. Valera had trusted these people, and now they had turned against her. But he also knew that there was no turning back. The mission was no longer about uncovering a conspiracy. It was about saving the Valerian Empire from destruction. But what Alex didn't know was that their discovery had already set things in motion. General Solas and Minister Lurin were not the only ones with secrets. Someone in their team had been watching, listening, and preparing to betray them as well.